Welcome back to my channel Conquer the Fear. In this video we are going to discuss about the top 5 mistakes every Spring Boot developer as a newcomer makes. This is going to be the part 2 video. If you haven't watched my part 1 video, I have actually uploaded a video prior to this. Please go check out my channel and watch that particular video first and then come to this particular video, because this is going to be the continue video of that particular video. So as we discussed in this is going to be the part 2 video where I am going to discuss about the mistakes every new developer as a Spring Boot does. Now, if you take the first example over here it is using the field injection. Now, whenever you are dealing with @auto_wired on particularly specifically on the fields, this is going to be one of the most common way of auto wiring the fields. Now, this is one of the common practical learned from the old Spring tutorials, but using directly on that particular field is going to make your code very hard to test, because that is not the right way, because this is going to hide the dependencies. Also, it is going to make your class mutable. So whenever these things are there, then the testing of that particular application makes it much more difficult, and you get an exception, say that the field level injection is detected and then there is a problem, right? So the alternative is like you have to go for the constructor injection. But yeah, so this is what actually the new developers always face, this particular problem. Now if you take a look at this particular stack trace, you will see the field injection is detected in that particular order service. So this might lead to an unexpected behavior. Also, whenever you are dealing with test cases, then this is something which is going to be a problematic. Now what is the solution to it? You have to always go for the constructor based injection, because if a class has only one constructor, then auto-wired is going to be the optional thing. But if it is not, right, if there are multiple of them, then you can actually go for that particular constructor based injection and then you can use it, which is going to be very handy. Okay, now from Spring 4.3 onwards, this particular annotation has got been an optional. Okay, so this is going to force the dependencies to be provided at the creation time, so making the object immutable, and the dependencies is going to be clear for testing purpose whenever you are dealing with the constructor based injection. So if you look at this example, in my service I'm going to inject using the my repo over there, and then you see it is assigning using the this.repo. So this is how you make it easy when you are trying to test your application. Okay, I hope what is a preferred way you got it. Then we are discussing about the mixed concerns in the controller. So the business logic, whatever it is placed up, okay, let's say it has got some complex data processing, so which is going to directly return inside the REST controller or the controller method, instead of delegating into the separate layer like service and the repository, right? So if you are not defining those things, then it is going to be a problematic, and it is not the standard way to write it. So you might fail some, like it's a the controller has got this specific logic to handle that particular service related thing, right? So that should not be there. So each layer should be written having their own specific way of handling it. That is the reason there are different layers like controller, service, and the repository. Okay, so in that way you have to write it. So let's see like the stack trace. So here you will see it should be handled in the service layer in the repository, and it should not be written in the controller. So it is clearly indicating that the mixing concern in the controller is going to be violating the separation of concerns, and it is going to make your testing very much difficult and to maintenance as well. So looking at this, you have to always follow the layered architecture which I mentioned, like controller is going to be the first point of contact. From there the request is going to be mapped up to the service layer, and the service layer is going to call the repository layer. Repository is calling, has got to be deal with the database, and then ultimately it returns since. So it is going to return the HTTP response with the mapping. It has got some input validations over that that can be done in that. You can delegate that using these different models. So services are there which are going to be annotated with the @service. So it should always contain, okay. So only the business logic and the transaction should be managed over there using the @transactional. So controller should only have that particular request and the mapping and the input validations and some delegation from controller to the service, okay. Then service, as we already discussed, the business logic. Then at the repository layer, you can annotate with the @repository, but it should only handle your database related accesses, okay. There should be nothing more than that inside it. So this is going to be a clear separation of code, modular, and a very well tested program. Then comes transaction management issues. So whenever you are dealing with database operations which are not atomic, it is going to lead some potential data corruption, okay. So this transaction management has a lot of issues. So there are some partial failures, especially when you are dealing the methods which has got multiple repository calls, okay. So different repository calls are there now. In that case, it is going to be a really difficult operations. So you always try to forget to write that particular transaction rollback and committing things, okay. So never try to manually work on that particular part, and also always check that particular things are being handled in a particular way. So if you look at this particular application stack trace over here, there is, whenever you're calling some methods and let's say the transaction is not active, okay. So in that case, either that particular service is not having transactional annotation written, or they have not improperly handled, they have not placed that particular annotation properly in that particular location, okay. So that is the reason it is not able to handle that particular transaction. Okay, same is applicable for the different the propagation over here. It is not going to allow or propagate that particular request until that it is properly been updated. So it requires different propagations, like require new is there, and serialization to be the topmost. But yeah, if it is going to check out that particular propagations levels. So the solution is always use transactional annotation. Now, whenever you are trying to develop an service, you should always annotate the business logic methods which is going to be resided in that particular methods with the transactional. You can define it at the class level, you can define it at the method level. So this is going to ensure all your database operations within that particular methods which are going to be executed successfully as a single unit, or either there will be rollback if there is at all an exception under this particular method in anywhere of that particular, okay. So let's say one method is calling another method is calling another method. So if there is an exception in the stack, like in the third method, right, in the under nested method, then the whole transaction will be rolled back. So that is how you deal with the transaction in the Spring Boot. Then default port. So the default port, you must be already knowing that it is 8080. So the embedded or the Tomcat Jetty servers which are there, they are going to have the default port to 8080. Okay, so this is going to be often being used by the other applications, like you have different Spring Boot applications, we have web servers, we have services which are running on that particular application. So it might happen that whenever you're trying to make your application up and that particular port is been already been occupied by other applications, then you might get this error, okay. So do you get this particular exception saying that the port is already been occupied, try to use this particular different port over there. So you have to just change that particular port. You have to either go to the application properties or YML to change that particular specific port. You can define it with the property server.port. So you can define your own specific port number over there, any free ports which is not being used up, you can actually check that particular whichever ports are being used up and make it use it. Then we have ignoring the Spring profile. So whenever you're trying to hard code your environment very specifically, let's say you have some database credentials, you have some external APIs to be called up, like you have some APIs keys over there. So you try to have that particular main configuration file instead of isolating them in a different way, okay, without with respect to the specific profiles. So you get some, let's say no active profile is been said, there is no I mean they are going to support, or they are going to call the default now. Okay, so this is the problem which is facing if you are not trying to deal with the profiles. So this is that stack trace. So you might get that no active profile set falling back to the default profile. So this is going to be the default profiles, so which is going to make use of the application dot property and the YML. So if you are using the environment specific profiles, then it is going to have separate the configuration, separate ports, separate environment related configuration, etc. So whenever your application is active on certain profile, you can make use of the spring dot profiles active profiles in your main applications, or you can set it with the command line so that your application is started and using the configuration as per the configuration, because it might not it should not happen that your dev application is always using the production related, or the production related application is using dev configuration. So that is going to be a troublesome. So make sure you use this and follow this particular points. I hope I was able to explain you all the important exceptions or important points which every developer makes as a mistake as a newcomer. So if you are one of them and if you have been making this particular mistakes, I hope you will be also guiding the other junior guys if they happen to mistakenly do these mistakes. If this video has given you a value, please give us a thumbs up. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. Thank you for watching.